This episode of WDW Today is being sponsored by TouringPlans.com. TouringPlans.com is your online resource for figuring out the best way to have an awesome trip to Walt Disney World. They're going to give you all the resources you're going to need to figure out how to navigate Walt Disney World very, very efficiently. Just like they have the crowd calendar, which is going to tell you the best and worst days of the year to go to Walt Disney World. Lines, which gives you wait times on your smartphone. And touring plans, which give you clear, efficient plans to help you plan your next day at Walt Disney World. Go try them out online at www.touringplans.com.
Bringing the world to your world, this is Walt Disney World Today. Here are Mike Scopa, Len Testa, Mike Newell, and your host, Matt Hochberg.
It's Monday, November 22nd, 2010, and this is episode 802 of WDW Today. I'm Matt Hochberg from StudiosCentral.com. Joining me on today's show is Len Testa, co-author of The Unofficial Guide to Walt Disney World. Welcome to the show, Len.
How's it going, Matt? I'm actually making a cheese-based Thanksgiving menu this year.
Cheese-based
Things, because the Pilgrims, I don't know if you know this, but the Native American word for turkey, it actually translates to cheese in English. It's a terrible mispronunciation.
That must be it.
Yeah, so we should actually be having many different varieties of cheese, not turkey, for Thanksgiving if we follow the traditionalists.
That's good to know. So I learned something today. Thank you, Len.
It's good. So what they don't teach you in history books, it's all about the Turkey military-industrial complex keeps the myth going.
Also joining us on today's show is Mike Scopa, a senior feature writer and blogger for allears.net. Welcome, Mike.
Please let all bugs exit before standing up.
It's tough to be a bug.
It's tough to be a bug.
Say that to myself every day. And also joining us on today's show is Mike Newell of Mouse World Radio. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Matt, I got 4 days accounting before I leave for Walt Disney World.
Woohoo! Nice. And also joining us on today's show, it's our pleasure to have back on WDW Today, John Phelan, the show director for the Osborne Family Spectacle of Dancing Lights. Welcome to the show, John.
Hey, great to be back. Thank you very much.
Our pleasure to have you back on here, John. Actually, we had, for those new listeners, we had John in episode 473. That was a couple of years ago. Lots has changed at the Osborne Lights. We wanted to bring John back on to talk about this year's display. They're already back on, which is great. I'm loving it. I've already seen it a couple times at Disney's Hollywood Studios, and it's running now through the end of the year, and actually goes a few days after the end of the year, goes right into January. And John, we brought you on this year to talk about the Osborne Lights, but actually I wanted to talk about something even before we talk about what's going on this year. And you were actually instrumental in helping bring the Osborne Lights over from Jennings Osborne's family house in Little Rock, Arkansas, to Walt Disney World. Can you tell us a little bit about, how did it work exactly? I mean, did you just call him up one day, got his phone number off the Yellow Pages, and how was that? Tell us about the how you got the Osborne Lights for him to give it over to Disney and kind of work with you guys.
Craigslist.
Well, it was it's kind of like just as you said. It was back in 1995, and we were trying to come up with what would be kind of the signature event for Disney's Hollywood Studios for the holiday season, and something that would be spectacular and all that sort of stuff. And one day on the 6 o'clock news, the final story was about this businessman in Little Rock, Arkansas, who had put up 3.5 million Christmas lights on his house, and his neighbors had sued him, and the Arkansas Supreme Court ruled he had to turn it off, and he appealed it to the U.S. Supreme Court, and they refused to hear the case, and that it was the end, that he was turning the lights off in Arkansas. And actually, Bruce Laval, who was the vice president of the studio, I was in a meeting, and at that time I was the program development manager for the studio, trying to think of major events for the studio. And he turned to me and he said, we should ask that guy if he'd bring his lights to Disney and we'll put them on Residential Street, which was one of our backlots then. And he kind of half-jokingly said it to me, but he said, well, see if we can get in touch with him. So it's just like you said. I found his phone number where he worked, and I called him up, and he had his own business in Little Rock, and he didn't quite understand what I was asking for at first. he knew I was from Disney, but as he told me later, I thought you wanted me to decorate a Residential Street in Orlando somewhere. So,
yeah, something off of 192 would be nice.
Yeah, So he said, well, put it in a letter to me and then send it to my attorney, because he was getting lots of requests for his lights. So I did that, and of course, as soon as he realized I was talking about putting them into Disney's Hollywood Studios, and he was a huge Disney fan anyway, knew exactly where I was talking about, and he immediately contacted me and said that he was very interested. And, so I flew out there. I flew out to Little Rock with another marketing partner and a technical director from entertainment, so that we could look at what he had and see if it would even work for us. And then kind of the rest is history, because it's all worked out.
Yeah, it's a terrific display. It's something that I think I look forward to every year. I know many, many other people enjoy the lights quite a bit. You guys should definitely be proud of what you've done over there, because you've taken the basic idea from the mid '90s that Jennings had done, and you guys have greatly improved upon it year after year. And we were talking before the show, John, and now you say that the lights are now almost 100% LED based.
Right. They're just about 100% LED, so the colors are really bright. Even, we slowly getting into our rope light. So the giant globe that kind of is one of the predominant icons from the original display that the Osbournes had at their house, that's all LED this year with the big Peace on Earth sign above it, and it's really bright, really stands out.
When did it become LED? Was it LED before you installed it this year, or did you convert it after you installed it?
No, we started to move towards LED about 3 years ago, and started to do portions. Of course, as the story goes, the lights got too big for Little Rock, so we brought them to the studio and we put them on Residential Street. And then, of course, we had to make way for Lights, Motors, Action, so we actually tore down Residential Street. But as I say, the lights got too big for Residential Street, so we moved them to the big city. We moved them to New York Street and the streets of America. And, once we hit the streets of America, and the lights, went up to like 3 stories now, and it's kind of walking down a canyon of lights as opposed to a neighborhood of lights as it was on Residential Street. And as LED lights began to become more and more prevalent, and of course, they are so much brighter than the incandescent, and of course use, practically less than 2/3 the amount of electricity. It was a natural move for us to slowly progress to LED. So now the display is almost 100% LED. The only thing that aren't LED right now are the angels, that are all the original angels from the display in Arkansas. But we're hoping to move them to LED next year.
Those angels always think they're so good. They're above everybody else.
Well, we saw the Scopa and I ran the Food and Wine half marathon this year.
Oh, yeah.
We saw the globe running through the studios, and I think Mike and I both had the same reaction when we saw it. We both thought it was the Reflections of Earth globe. It was so bright. We were sort of so far into the race at that point. I think it looks fantastic. I think it looks really good.
Yeah,
it was very, very bright. Yeah.
Yeah, very bright.
Yeah, it really looks. It's and that's one of my favorite parts of the display is that giant globe. So.
What else? Go ahead, John. Sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say one thing that really stood out this year to me. Also, I'd love to hear some of your thoughts on it. Is the new, I don't know what you would call them, those windows that make it look like it's snowing. Do you know which ones I'm talking about?
Yes, I know exactly what you're doing. Actually, that is a bit of an experiment we're trying this year. These are again, they're kind of like LED panels. They're video panels. They're curtains, actually. Kind of like an LED screen that we have in the Chevy building. If you're familiar with the street at all, there's a building that has a big Chevy sign, a Chevrolet sign on the side. Mm-hmm. And in 6 of those windows, we were testing this year, and we decided, let's go ahead and do this. And we're debating on the direction in which we're going to take that for next year. But right now, we have a nice little scene of it snowing there.
It's a really great. I love the addition that it really adds such a different thing to it. And people, it's funny because I noticed it on the first night that the Osborne lights turned on this year, and it's funny to see other people's reactions when they first see it because it's so cool. It's such a unique and interesting thing that I don't think anyone's really seen before to that extent.
Yeah. So of course our challenge is now how do we spread that through the whole street, or what exactly are we going to do with that? Of course, we've added a new dancing song to the show this year too.
Yeah, that's right. The whole, not only that, there's a little more synergy. If Michael Eisner was still here, he'd be proud of that. with with Phineas and Ferb, and you added the Christmas is starting now. Talk to us about that. About how did you integrate? Now it's not just the song that's integrated, but there's also a little bit that precedes and comes after the
Yeah,
the song.
it was, as things normally happen. Marketing had talked to us about that there was a Phineas and Ferb Christmas special. It actually aired last year, and that if we would listen to the music and see it, perhaps we would be interested in dancing the lights to one of the songs. And we really like that song, Christmas is Starting Now by Big Bad Voodoo Daddy, and it's such a high energy song, and it has great dynamics which allow you to have a lot of fun with the lights. And as we were doing it, our producer, Rob Hamburg, was like, well, you know what, maybe we should even have maybe Phineas and Ferb can make an appearance on the little radio show we do every night, kind of telling the story. And it kind of went from there. We contacted, through our synergy partners here, we contacted the producers of Phineas and Ferb, and they were all for it. So we partnered with them, and one of our other show directors, Tony Giordano, who is he loves Phineas and Ferb, and I met with him, and he actually came up with the two scenarios that we do out there, and kind of wrote a script, sent it out to them, and they adjusted it and recorded it, and then we have it in the show this year.
How do you guys go about planning stuff that's new for the show every year? Do you think of it yourselves, or do people come up to you and say, hey, we need to, do people from marketing come up to you and say, dude, we got a new show and it's Sweet Life at Sea. We got to promote Sweet Life at Sea. Make some lights in the shape of Zach and Cody.
Well, it's funny. I mean, of course, every once in a while we'll get a request maybe from marketing or synergy or something. But to be quite honest with you, the creativity of the display really comes out of the crew that puts it up. I mean, we do have a lighting designer that works on the display, a fellow by the name of Mark O'Connor. He's been working with the display now for about 6 years. And Susan Rose, who actually is the lighting designer programmer who actually makes the lights dance. She programs the lights to the music. But we got a great crew that puts the display up every year. And we'll meet back in March, April, May, and start the planning, and we'll decide if we're going to change colors on buildings, and we'll talk about things such as the video in the window, or what new different types of fun little things that we can do with the display, where hidden Mickeys will go, or if there's any other new things, such as this year we've moved some of the figurines around. That Santa and Mickey are in a new spot shaking hands, and on Brownstone we moved a lot of the props out onto the sidewalk, the bikes and the presents and the cars and the barbecue grill and things like that. It really becomes a collaborative effort of the crew, and setting the things up. Even every year, I don't know if you know the story of the cat that's hidden out there, and every year they decide where that's going to go.
Yeah, it's a great story.
No.
The cat, why don't you tell some of our listeners? I'm sure there's some listeners who aren't aware of the story, which is really cool, an interesting accident that turned into something really cool.
Yeah, the cat was a really interesting thing. Of course, that very first year, back in 1995, we didn't really finalize the agreement with the Osbournes until late October. So, and we wanted the display to be up and running by, the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. So 4 giant Mayflower moving vans showed up at the studio about November 4th with all the lights from Arkansas. And 3 of Jennings' guys had come, who principally always worked on a display in Arkansas, came to help us, work with our crew putting the lights up. And we're unloading all this stuff, and all these figurines are coming out. And then this one figurine in the shape of a cat comes out. It's about 4 foot high or so. And it was roped in dark purple. And I was like, gosh, this doesn't feel like, it doesn't go with the Angels. It doesn't go with the Snowmen, the Elves. So I called Jennings Osborne up. I said, Jennings, everything's here. We're starting to work. But, we have this cat. Where does the cat go in the display? And he goes, oh, God, I got on the truck by mistake. That's for my Halloween light display. So, and then, a member of the crew said, hey, you know what? We should put it up anyway. So that's what we started to do. The crew puts it in a different place every year. and it kind of hides it, and you have to try to find it. It's kind of become this, underground little story, and now lots and lots of people. Actually, we have signs now that we have on the lampposts out there. They're actually very nicely designed little signs that you can read that tell you little bits and pieces about the display, and one of those signs will tell you about the cat, that you have to go look for the cat.
That's awesome.
So,
Hey,
it's a
John.
fun little thing. Yeah.
You would think that after all these years of putting up the display and taking it down and having all this experience, that it would be as smooth as silk to go with it every year. But I was going to ask you, what is the biggest challenge every year when it comes to, ramping up for putting up the display? What's the biggest challenge that faces you every year?
The biggest challenge is probably, just the physicalness of putting up the display. It is a long, tedious process if you really think about it, because there is not a strand of light that's out there that's longer than 100 bulbs, and the lights that are out there are exactly like the lights that you would buy in a store. So we're putting up, like 5 million lights, and we have a turnover every year of crew. Although, like I keep going back to a certain extent, there is a core crew that's been working on a display now for, 6, some of them up to 10, 15, almost the whole time.
Wow.
That really are extremely passionate about the display, and really, it's really amazing because you'll get some technicians that will say, I can't, after 2 weeks of doing this, they go crazy. But we have other guys that just, take it like a work of art. I always say, when you really go out there and you look at the detail of all those lights put up and all the different colors around the windows and the molding and the doorways, and how some of the, the buildings are double-stranded with different color lights and stuff, it takes great, great care. So the biggest challenge is finding people who really love doing this, and then to have them who teach. Basically, we had a crew of over 40 putting these lights up this year. And I would speculate that over 30 of them had never done it before. So basically it was, our experienced crew teaching them how to do it. And also, it's keeping that morale up, because they're working from 9 o'clock at night until 8 in the morning. It's in the dead of night that they're doing this. So
that's just it. I don't have the patience to string my own house up on a Sunday. These guys start in August. They start in like mid-August in the blazing heat, starting all this, and you're not it's hard to get in the spirit because it's 99 degrees at night and humid, and
Exactly.
And these guys, I don't know. I don't know if I could do it.
Troopers, man.
Yeah, it's got to be tough.
yeah, it is really tough. But if you go out there, if you go visit the display, and you'll see technicians walking around on the street with headsets on. Those technicians, they're the core group. They're the hardcore guys that really love this display. So, and they love to talk about it. So any guest that's ever out there on the street, you see one of those technicians walking around with a headset on, stop and ask him. If you have any questions, stop and ask them, because they love to talk about it, and they can tell you lots of stories or lots of information about it.
That's great to know. I'd love to just at least give my appreciation, because I like I said, it's a lot of effort and a lot of dedication just for, a month almost, and then it's all gone.
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely tell the passion in the effort there. And, with the lights also, not only are the lights an integral part of the whole show, John, but also the music. And we talked a little bit about the dancing music, but take us through kind of the music that we hear in the, when the lights aren't dancing there. I'm not sure if that's under your call or you've got someone else who does that. I'm not sure.
Well, actually it is. I put that together every year with, again, the other thing I love about working on the display, I have to say, is that it's very collaborative, because I'll always talk to the technicians. As I mentioned before, Rob Hamburg, who's the producer that I worked with, actually, Rob came to me this year and he basically said, I want to have Bruce Springsteen in the display this year, his song. So we even have a Christmas song by Bruce Springsteen this year. So what we really try to do is, I kind of think of the display as the ultimate, and trying to keep the Osborne story connected to it. To me, it's kind of like the ultimate Americana Christmas light story. display. So I try to.
It's the ultimate
do,
small town Americana. 5 million bulbs.
5 million lights.
with Florida
it's
Power
what
and Light.
everybody everybody imagines they would do if they had the time and money and wherewithal to do it. But anyway, so I try to mix the music up a little bit. I have a lot of traditional stuff, all mostly pop. When I say pop, I mean you've got Bing Crosby and you've got Julie Garland singing "Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas," but you'll also have Jump 5. You got Bruce Springsteen in there this year. You'll have the Mannheim Steamroller music's in there. You have the Beach Boys in there.
By law, really you have to have the Mannheim Steamroller by law, right? That's a
yeah.
Orange County. Orange County says that, right?
You have a little bit of everything in there to. We have a lot of guests that always come up to the technicians. As a matter of fact, this is one of the things I have to do tomorrow because one of the stage managers sent me an email last week and said, "Hey, can you send me the list of songs, and who everybody is performing? Because people want to buy the CD, and it's not something that you can buy because it's just we could go into our own recording studio and just put together the music, off of a whole bunch of different CDs and stuff. So, but
it's a tremendous effort. I mean,
like it.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I love the classics, like the music from the 50s and 60s, and even before that, the 40s, like the Bing Crosbys, the ones, that you basically heard all the time. But those classic songs, I think, really, evoke that sense that you are actually in a town where it actually is snowing and not so much Central Florida. And I think it's a credit to what the effort that you and your team does, John, because it does such an amazing job. And one thing that I love, I mean, the lights are great, the dancing is awesome, but the level of detail in the stories that you're telling throughout the streets of America, be it the surfer with his apartment or the family watching the ABC's 25 Days of Christmas, I mean, that detail, I love it. It's so cool to kind of peer in those windows and see a different story being told in there. And tell our listeners a little bit about that, because I'm not sure everyone knows about that. Because a lot of people, sit there and they look at the lights and wow, that's great. But there's a lot more being told there than just
I've never heard this.
Yeah, all the different fire escapes in the balconies. What we kind of stood on the street, and again, I keep going back to the crew and everybody. We would just stand there and say, well, let's just come up with different ideas of who lives in all these buildings and how they would decorate their fire escapes for Christmas. So. And that is one of the areas where we can evolve from year to year. One year, like 3 members of the crew all had babies. They had children born during the setup. So one was dedicated totally towards young. You had all these storks and baby images and stuff like that on the fire escape and stuff, kind of like a real young child's Christmas, an infant Christmas type setup, and the New York. Ballerina, dancer type, as you mentioned, a surfer. There's a mailman. There's one who has mailboxes all on his balcony because he's a mailman. And you go down Brownstone, and like you say, you can peek into one of the windows, and there's a little fireplace going, and the TV's on. And of course, that's a little synergy moment for us to play some ABC Family, promo. But they wanted us to put the original ask was, can you put, a monitor in one of the windows down on New York Street just to kind of run a promo? And we kind of, developed that into a little story and made it more of a story. So it's, like I said, I like the crew to have fun and to have, kind of a little creative freedom when they're putting it up. Because, like I say, that keeps them interested and they come up with some great ideas.
Absolutely. Well, John, you guys have done another amazing job this year. The Osborne Lights are you've outdone yourselves once again. So I encourage all of our listeners to check out the Osborne Lights this year. They're on through January 3rd, 2011, and it's a must-do for the holiday season because it's just I think it's the best holiday thing that goes on in the parks. I'm a little biased, but that being said, it's really great. So if you get a chance, definitely go check it out and spend some time looking around. And John, thank you so much for joining us on this show.
Oh, my pleasure, guys, and have a great holiday season.
Thank you, and that'll do it for us today. If you want to follow our older episodes, read our show notes, or send us your comments, you can visit us online at wdwtoday.com. For Len Testa, Mike Scopa, and Mike Newell, and John Phelan, I'm Matt Hochberg. We'll see you on the next show.
Stupid Judy, stupid energy.
This has been a production of Mouse World Radio.